What have you learned from the years you were parenting? Well, let's talk to someone who's been with me through most of my years of parenting. It's my baby girl, my adult child, here today to share with us about being an adult child. Let's talk now with her. Hello and welcome. You're listening to Life with Libby Joy, a podcast to explore the journey of womanhood, our experiences, our challenges, and our successes. It is my hope that you will be informed and inspired through our conversations and stories shared by women who are navigating this journey called life. I am your host, Libby Joy, and we are going to enjoy the journey of life together. My main theme tonight is raising adultish children. And today I welcome my adult child, Maia. Hi, Maia. How are you this evening? How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
That's
Let's just jump right in. Maia, do you want to tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I guess. My name is Maia Lee. I am Libby Joy's youngest daughter. I'm in law school. I'm a law student at Howard University School of Law. I live in DC, and I recently graduated from Cornell University for my undergraduate degree. And I love all things creating. I love reading, love writing, love a little bit of nerdy things, learning about history. I just have a variety of interests. So I'm in school. I love creating, love God, and that's pretty much me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And congratulations on that first year of law school.
Oh,
Yay.
child, I need it. I
Yay.
need
Yeah.
it.
Right. Right. That's something to celebrate. So we're going to just jump right in. I've been talking about raising adultish children. Again, I use the word adult children because you're my child and you're an adult. And so it's not to say that adultish children are not adults, but it's just to make sure we clarify what type of children we're talking about. And tonight, I want just to go through a few things that I've been sharing with the audience and just having your perspective on it. I've been reading this book. It tells me to keep my mouth shut. And it told me a few things. And one of the main things I want to begin with tonight was that it said that I was fired from my current position as your mother, that my roles and responsibilities change as you become an adult. And so, what do you think about that? That my roles and responsibilities have changed, that I'm fired from the parent I used to be when you were younger. What do you think about that concept?
I think I agree with it in part, and I have like a little bit of edits that I would make to it. I would say that your role as a parent definitely shifts as your children get older and become adults. Like your primary role, I think, changes a bit. Like, when you're younger, like you're a lot more involved, or when children are younger, parents are a lot more involved in, a child's decision making, what they do, where they go. But obviously, as children get older and they become adults, they make their own money. Like they have more control over what decisions they make, where they go, what they do, when they do it. And so I think that as we get older, parents definitely have to learn how to sort of loosen the reins a bit, just because naturally children are like they're moving into a different phase of life in which the same type of parenting that was needed when they were younger, when they were, in middle school or in high school, is not the same type of parenting that they need as adults. But one thing we were talking about was the idea that, children still need the parent that, you were, or the parent that they were when their children are young. And so what I mean by that is, even though I'm technically an adult, as you would say, I still need my mom, and I still need my mom in the way that I needed her when I was 5, when I stubbed my toe somewhere, when I was hurt, when I was sad about things. And even to this day, I still come and cry to you about things. I call you when I need support. But like I said, I think that the primary role shifts. So I don't think you're entirely fired from your previous job, but I think that you definitely get, I would say, promotion. You have less responsibilities in one area, but you have a different job description. So I don't think you were completely fired.
Well, thank you for promoting me. I was dealing with the fired concept, so thank you for promoting me to just a new responsibility.
Yeah.
I appreciate that part. And
Mhm.
so the other thought I had, and this is the whole keep your mouth shut, comes from that same author who said, we're raising these adult children and we need to learn how to keep our mouths shut. I'm going to ask, do you think your mother has kept her mouth shut when I don't agree with some of the thoughts and decisions that you make? Do I keep my mouth shut pretty good, or am I saying a whole lot of things I shouldn't be saying?
I would say that you do a good job of shutting your mouth. Now, controlling your face is a little bit different. We have to work on that. But honestly, it's something that I inherited from you, so I can't even say too much about about that. But I think that in general, like because I know that you're actively trying to work on like letting me have my autonomy and not saying everything that you may be thinking, I appreciate that. I think that sometimes, like, especially, as we're growing up, a lot of us like to think as children or adult children, we like to think that we have a handle on things or that we're getting things, which is true. We're obviously learning and growing, and we are more capable than we were when we were younger of being able to handle things on our own. But I think that sometimes when parents say certain things, it kind of makes us feel like we don't have as good of a grasp as we thought we did on certain things. And sometimes that can be a little inflammatory when it comes to like how parents and children interact. And so as children are trying to gain their autonomy, I think it's helpful that parents kind of take a step back with the not even take a step back, I would just say they change the way that they interact with their children, what they say, how they say it. I think is a really big difference in making sure that you still maintain healthy contact with your child and giving them your opinions, but not fully making them feel like you're forcing them to do something or telling them to do something. More so just giving them suggestions on like, how they could probably avoid certain mistakes or
Mhm.
certain outcomes.
Yeah, avoiding certain mistakes and outcomes. I agree with you that a lot of times I think the reason why parents are so quick to say all of the words that we can say is because we do want to keep you from danger, keep you from a mistake, keep you from doing something that either we've done before or we've seen done.
Mhm.
And that can also be problematic because with your life and your experiences is how you become wise,
Mhm.
right? That's how you become strong. And so part of the stepping back, I feel, is to help you to gain your wings and fly. You were not meant to be in the nest all of your life. You were actually meant to get out of the nest and fly. And I'm not going to talk about eagles and birds. However, they do make a good push for their birds to get out of a nest. And sometimes if you watch that, the little birdie looks like it's not gonna make it. But then you see that they realize that they have wings and
Mhm.
they already know how to fly. And
Yeah.
I think that's what I feel for you as my adult child, that you have wings and
Mhm.
you're learning how to fly. And so I appreciate that. And again, you are making great decisions. There's some things I would do differently, obviously, but there are children that are doing things differently than
Mhm.
what their parents want them to do.
Mhm.
Either change career paths, decided not to go to school when their parents thought they would be going to school. They're in a different field than their parents thought they would be in.
Mhm.
Um, what do you think about those conversations? Because these are hard conversations that you know people my age are having now with their adult children. What
Mhm.
would you say about that when your child is either? And I talked about failure to launch when children aren't moving forward, or
Mhm.
people going slow in their launch. What
Mhm.
would you say? What's some advice you think you would give to just to a parent who has a child like that?
Yeah. I would say, and I think that this is, I would preface it with that this is purely hypothetical for me because I will say that I feel the career path that I've chosen is pretty traditional. I think that a lot of parents will be comfortable with their child making these decisions. But
Mhm.
I think that if I were in a position where I felt I was doing something that, maybe you weren't as comfortable with, but I felt that it was right for me, I feel that what parents can honestly do best is just give their child, the advice that they would want to give their child. Because, obviously parents have wisdom that children don't have, and you all have lived for a lot longer than we have. And so I think it's important to give that wisdom. But I think there's also a beauty in letting children make their own mistakes a lot of times. And especially when children are dead set on certain things. All children are different, but for stubborn children, for example, there are some things or some lessons that some children just have to learn on their own. And just like, the bird metaphor that you use, the only way to really learn how to use your wings is to use them. And sometimes, birds will fall flat on their face when they're first learning to fly, because that's the way that they learn to fly. And so if you don't let your child use their wings, they won't be able to use them in the future when they actually really need to. And so I think, like I said, giving them that advice of what you would do in a situation, giving your wisdom and knowledge, but letting them make those mistakes. And then also afterwards, even if it does turn out the way that you said it would, or the way that you thought it would internally, I think being prepared for that possible outcome and being there to nurture that child in that moment. I think that it's important not to say I told you so, but just to go back and making sure that you're prepared for it. If this outcome that I foresaw actually does happen, I have the tools to support my child through whatever, those outcomes may be. I think that that's really important. So if we want to give steps to it, give your advice in the beginning, tell them what you think, may be a good idea. Don't tell them what they need to do, because that seems more like a command than a suggestion. Then, you let them do what they decide to do. And if they fall, be prepared to support them in the ways that, you think that they will probably need to be supported if that negative outcome does occur. I mean, also be encouraging, I think, too, because sometimes, children take certain paths and we don't think that, these paths are going to work out for them. And it may be a thing that they actually need to do in order to get to the next level. So I think that just being supportive and not being too, I don't want to say, I'm trying to find the right word for it, but not particularly questioning their dreams, but just being there to support them, like when they're going through the ups and downs of life that we've all gone through and that you parents have gone through in their 20s and in their formative years.
Yes, I like the concept of again, you said I had some of my position was still there, so the nurturing and the support and the encouragement is still there, and being there to catch you even if you fall, if you succeed to clap, and if you don't to catch you. And so I'm using my hands one way or the other,
Yeah.
right? Either I'm catching you or I'm clapping for you. Either way it goes, I'm there for you. And to me, that's what a parent does, even on an adult. That's what a parent does. And I think that is really great. And I just wanted to say, I was talking about my conversation with my sister and her thoughts about, her face says it all. And you just mentioned your face says it all, and my face says it all. And part of that conversation, she mentioned something I am treasuring. It's actually my favorite thing she said, is that we don't just love our children, we actually like them. And she mentioned that she actually liked her adult children, all three of them. She said 100%. And I said, that's what I'm striving to be. So I'm excited that I like my children 100%. I actually like you all. I like to talk with you and laugh with you. And I enjoy, we have very deep conversations about all kind of things, from politics to what we're watching on TV. And so those conversations are great. But there was a time, very short, very brief, I wasn't so sure that you were going to like me and I was going to like you. Love you, yes. Like you, maybe. And these are the years I want to talk about today, because I do know there are people my age and older and younger, whoever's listening to this broadcast, that has children who are not quite at the adult stage, that are at that teenage, preteen stage, that are in that in between where it's like a silence. Like the house is silent because either they're in their phones. I tell my all the time, even though you all had a phone, it didn't have Wi-Fi until you got much older. They were like in high school. So they weren't on there all the time. But now everybody's always on their phone or they're doing something. And, mom conversations or dad conversations is not a thing. I'd rather be, on, I don't know, it's not Snapchat anymore. There's other things that kids are on now. I know I'm dating myself, but there's all kind of, I know that was you all saying Snapchat, but now, they do have it still, but
They do. It's irrelevant. It's really TikTok.
it's more TikTok. Yeah, we're in TikTok generation. And so I'm also on TikTok.
Same,
Very, 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 very
shameless
briefly.
plug.
I just might plug for my TikTok. I do have a TikTok station, but all of these things, parents feel sometimes like the child doesn't want to talk to them or doesn't like them. And so yours was around preteen, beginning of your teenage years. Do you want to talk a little bit about what was going on? Even when I walk into a room and it looked like I would breathe and I would be doing that wrong. What what would you say? What was going on in your mind? Do you remember what was going on in your mind all those years ago now?
Yeah, all those years
All
ago.
those years ago.
Honestly, I think that as teenagers, there are a lot of changes going on, a lot of hormones shifting, and there are just a lot of things going on that you can't control physically. And I think that that manifests in the way that, teenagers treat people. I feel like it's a typical stereotype that teenagers are irritated with everything that their parents do. They think that their parents are not cool. So I think that I was definitely a stereotypical teenager in that way. But I think that it really, sometimes I didn't even understand how I felt. Sometimes, like you said, you would breathe and I would just get irritated and I didn't know why. And even there were some times that I caught myself, like I knew I was being irritable and I couldn't put my finger on why I was being irritable. So I would just retreat into my room because I felt bad that I was being irritable, but I couldn't understand why. And so sometimes it's not always personal. Sometimes there are just a lot of things going on internally that honestly we're not even conscious of. As teenagers, I wasn't conscious of. And so I think that that is where some of the irritation or frustration comes from. But I think that in reflecting on, like our relationship now in the past like 3 years or so, I think around my sophomore, junior year of college is when I realized that, you're just a girl. Like you are really just a person. You have feelings, you have experiences, and you were once in my shoes. And I think that that perspective is something that I was really missing when I was a teenager. I think it helps even with my interactions with you today because we still like, even though we're friends now, I guess, even though I'm not your little friend, it was a phrase that was used often, but we're friends now. But there are also some times where you still get irritable. I get irritable, but I think now because I have more of a perspective about, who you are and the fact that you are a person, I realize sometimes you just get overstimulated and I just let you have your time. You start fussing, I just let you be. So I think that like when I was a teenager, I didn't get that. And I didn't see that, like, there were things that were going on behind what I could see in your life that contributed to the way that you may have acted in some situations or reasons why you were frustrated with certain things I would do. So I think that that's the thing. I was just a teenager with a lot of hormones, and then also I lacked perspective. And I think that that's something that children just kind of take on as you go on. I feel like as adults, children start to realize, okay, my parent is actually a person. They've gone through these experiences. They've been in my shoes. And I think that that is something that greatly contributed to like the positive development of our relationship.
Very good. And I do like you now. I like you.
Oh, yeah, you're cool. You're cool.
Kind of, you're kind of cool.
You're kind of cool. 95% of the time,
95. Okay. Okay. I'll work on the other 5% that I'm missing. All right. So with that, I do want to ask this question, and I haven't read the book, but it was intriguing to me just the conversation people were having around about what they wish their mother would have told them.
Mhm.
And I mentioned that to you that I said we should really read this book together. And we always said we're going to. We will eventually get there. It hasn't hit yet. She's got a lot of other books she's reading right now. So I know we're not there yet. But I do want to ask, is there something you wish I would have told you or shown you? Or is there something you wish you would have asked more questions about so we could have had more conversations about? Just kind of your perspective, your thoughts about that.
Yeah. I think that because of the type of child that I was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think I was a pretty emotionally intelligent child and I could take on the perspectives of others. But I think because there were certain things that I was not privy to. And I would also preface with saying that, like, there is a certain boundary, obviously, with parent and child relationships. Children are not supposed to know everything that goes on with their parents' lives. But I think that I wish I would have known some of the things that may have contributed to why you may have acted certain ways on certain days, or sometimes because parents have bad days too. You were going through certain things when I was younger and there are certain things that I just didn't know, and so I couldn't make sense of the reasons why you would react certain ways on certain days. And I think that being given some of that context would have been helpful in for our relationship development as a teenager. And I think that I'm starting to see, at least on the internet, some developments with how parents interact with their children now. And that's a whole different subject because we have the whole gentle parenting concept and, old school parenting. But I think the one thing I do appreciate from what I've seen about gentle parenting is the way that parents communicate more openly with their children, because I feel like it kind of speeds up that process of understanding that your parent is a person a little bit faster. Like, it helps children to understand, okay, just like mommy gets overstimulated, so do you. And we have that understanding that we are both similar in this way. And so if I act a certain way, sometimes it's not always attributable to you. And I think that understanding, or like just telling me some of the things that were going on with your life, I think that would have been helpful to know when I was younger, because it would have greatly contributed to our relationship earlier on, I would say.
Yeah, and I don't want to take this conversation too far to the left, but I did not share with you um, about my health
Mm-hmm.
battles and challenges. I know I did not. I
Mm-hmm.
did not share with you. I think you heard of the diagnosis, but I don't think you understood all of the things that I was going through, the pain that I was in at points in time, and just things. Mood swings are also a thing that happens with the MS. So there were lots of different things. You're right. I did not share with you as a child. And because you're right, it was because I thought I was protecting you, or it wasn't something you needed to know at that moment. But I'm glad now, as you are older, that we are able to share more of those details, or as a part of our intimate relationship. I
Mm-hmm.
realized even with my parents, when I was going to college, they had to give me their information for their money so we could do the financial aid.
Yeah.
I realized then that I don't even know how, I mean, not to be funny, how we were eating. Like, I saw the bills and I saw the income. And I literally, my parents were so wonderful. It wasn't much that I didn't have that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I was, I'd been to, different places. I went to Hawaii. I went to Bermuda a couple times when I was younger. I was in Mexico and like, I had been to all these different places. I'd been
Mm-hmm.
all over the world. We stayed in hotels. We've done all kind of things. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, wow, my parents are really like putting a lot of work into making sure they could put all this together and I have a great life. And so when I went to college, I was aware that my parents could not afford this extremely expensive tuition.
Yeah.
So I went to find a place that they could afford that
Mm-hmm.
was great, which is what led me to the school that I went to. Great school. And they actually gave me a scholarship for my academics and for all of those things. But you're right. It did put in perspective the
Mm-hmm.
things that my parents, now my dad used to say every time we went on a trip, the $5 he had in his wallet was it. I mean, but we used to just, laugh and joke and move along.
Yeah.
But now I realize, like, parents really do struggle sometimes with lots
Mm-hmm.
that they don't share with their children for reasons we understand. But it
Mm-hmm.
is good as you make that connection to adults that sharing is more open and more honest. And you can see your parent for truly what they are. They're people. We're people. And I'm glad you know I'm a person now. I thank you for making me a person.
Yeah.
Before I was just a mommy, now I'm a person,
Yeah.
right? And that's good information, even the role in that struggle. Is there anything else you want to talk about as far as being a new adult? Because you are a brand new adult. And anything you want to share, any words of wisdom for those that are new adults that may be listening, or someone who wants to share this with their child? Anything you think of, your wisdom that you accrued over this last year out of college?
Honestly, I would use the word adult loosely. I really would. But I think that like being in school again definitely is a different kind of safety net. But from what I've been seeing from my friends that went straight to, working and, dealing with their own finances, living in a different place, I think that we still really have leaned on our communities. And I think that it's a beautiful thing to embrace. I think that like post grad comes with a lot of like scaries, as they say. Like you're scared about real life, not being in the safety net of school or like in your parents' house. But I think that even though you may be a little bit afraid, I think doing the things that scare you is really important. And like I said, leaning on the community around you, like, and not just your parents, but even like my friends, for example, like my college friends, I still lean on them to this day while I'm in school, and they're working, they're doing their thing, I'm doing my thing in school. But I think just establishing that community is really important because I think community has just been important for our culture in general. And so I think that as you're growing up, as you're trying to navigate different things, leaning on the people around you, and not being afraid to step out, but also taking wisdom too from your parents, from people that have done things before you, has at least been very helpful for me. It's been helpful for the people around me that are, working and, being real adults. So I think that just even though you want to step out on your own, then still listen to the people around you, even when they give suggestions. Even if you don't take them, just take them into the consideration. And if you're a little bit afraid to step out, I would say take that leap because it really will. It will take you further than you may have imagined yourself going. And I think that the pushing of boundaries and seeing where I can go has been the most rewarding thing of being an adult, as they say. So I guess that's what all I would have to say for other adult children.
That was wonderful advice, Maya. I love your air quotes. She reminds me often that she's still a child.
I'm still a child. I don't get off of the
Hey,
insurance. I'm
no, no,
26.
I tell her, no, 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 you're an adult.
No, 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 no,
We
no.
go back and forth. I tell her, you're an adult. She said, no, no, still a child.
I'm still on the insurance, and so I'm still a child.
Oh boy, oh boy. Well, I'm sure there's lots of other things that I could think of. I do want to say though, for those that are listening, if you have an adult child and you're doing some struggling with them, we talked a little bit about that in a couple episodes about your adult child not flourishing or not thriving. Just giving that same conversation of the nurturing and the caring. I always usually mention a mental health professional is always key and important. I tell my children all the time, if you need someone to talk to, of course, mom, of course, dad, but there's someone who is trained to listen to you that can help you even go through some of life's different qualifications and struggles and issues. All of those things that we deal with as an adult, sometimes you do need that. When you said the scaries are going through these beginning years, I think that's a very good idea to find somebody. Your village is good. Just these are just a few of my takeaways from tonight's conversation. But your village is great to have. Also, maybe a mental health professional, a part of that village, to make sure that you're getting some sound wisdom, some you can let out some things that you need to let out. You can navigate through some different journeys that you're going through. We also heard tonight that these are stages. Even in the teenage years that were silent, there were phases and stages. And so all of those things don't last. As you're going through these things with your children, continue to love on them, continue to support them, continue to reach out. And it will change. It will turn around. They may not like you today, but they love you and they will love you and like you tomorrow. And that's always encouraging to know that there's hope that your relationship and your stage will change with your adult child. I also heard Amaya just give some great wisdom to start scared for your adult children. Let them know that, we all had to start scared. We all didn't have it put together when we leaped out on faith. I know I didn't have it all put together when I leaped out to do this podcast. I jumped out. Maya was like, "What you gonna talk about?" And I was like, things that are about women. All things women is what I mentioned. And it's a very broad subject, but I really felt passionate about really sharing with women some of the concerns that we have, just to be another voice to encourage. I believe joy is a part of life, and I want to make sure that you have your joy drop. My joy drop is actually right in front of you. Her middle name is Joy. She's got a lot of middle names, but one of them is Joy, like mine. She's got it in her. And I'm glad that she's bringing some joy to my life today and to your lives today. So, again, these are stages, they're phases, they move from them, and eventually you get to that like it stage. I like you like me. That was a song back in the day, but it's true. It's a good thing to have a child that likes you and also loves you, and a mother that loves you and also likes you. That relationship is built with open communication, honesty. There has to be some raw moments sometimes, where sometimes some of the things that you're going through have to be shared, even if they're uncomfortable, so they can see that there is mutual trust and respect. And so that is what I'm asking from my audience today. Give your adult children mutual trust and respect. That is what one of my takeaways. And if you have your mouth shut and your face says something else and they see it, just let them know that you're trying to get them to fly. And while you have opinions, you want them to make sure that they spread their wings and try, because that is so important. Well, that is our episode for tonight. Thank you so much, Maya. Yay. We've been talking about this for a long time. She
We
will not
have been.
be here just this one time. I am going to pull her back in for some more conversations. Maybe we'll eventually read that book I'm trying to read, and she can join me to have that conversation when we read that book. But again,
Yes.
thank you so much for coming tonight. And thank you so much for everyone who tuned in tonight. You have listened to this episode with Life with Libby Joy. Again, I'm Libby Joy. Thanks for joining me. And I'm asking that you would thank you. Aw.
Oh, it's up. Okay, that's cool.
I did it. Two hearts. Oh, I'm asking that you would join me again next week for another conversation. Again, we are actually going to talk about motherhood, but really going to specifically speak about mental health and motherhood. I'm going to have an expert come on to talk about mental health. I'm going to ask her to share some of her thoughts about mothers and motherhood. And we're going to have a really good conversation to end the month of May with that. And then in June, just going to give you a preview for June, because Maya said it today. She said, start scared. I have the person who made me think about that more than one time coming to us in June, talking about starting scared, how you start your business scared, how you start all your new things scared, because you have to start somewhere. And if you have to start somewhere, it's okay if you're scared. So we're going to talk about that in June. So please join me next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please subscribe and share this podcast with a friend. Remember to enjoy the journey of life.
Yes.